Climber. It is time for songwriters to take back our power and reclaim our worth. If you agree with that, you're going to love today's guest. He's a hit songwriter and he's done begging for crumbs. Buckle up and listen up. Johnny, do that thing.
Welcome to the C.L.I.M.B. This is a show dedicated to helping singers, songwriters, and indie artists like you stop picking up crumbs and create leverage in the music business. That's why we call it the C.L.I.M.B. C.L.I.M.B. See what we did there? Creating leverage in the music business. Because leverage is what it's going to take to get you paid, to get you doing and making a living at what you were born to do and born to make a living at. And that's a backronym from a good friend and co-host, Mr. Brent Baxter, who's an award-winning hit songwriter with cuts by Alan Jackson, Randy Travis, Lady A, Joe Nichols, and more. He's got number ones in Southern Gospel. He's got top tens in Australia, top tens in Texas. The man's all over the place. But why do you care? Because he helps songwriters like you turn pro by revealing how you write like a pro.
Yeah.
And how you do business like a pro. And on the regular, that final component is he hooks you up with professionals. He introduces you to the pros, right? You can find Brent very easily at songwritingpro.com.
And I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Johnny Dwinell. Johnny owns Daredevil Production. They're breaking artists digitally by identifying new fans through data. Yeah, it's complicated, but he's smart. If you're an artist looking to increase your streams, blow up your video views, sell more live show tickets, and get discovered by new fans, TV, and music industry pros, then Daredevil Production can help. Daredevil has worked with multi-platinum artists like Colin Ray, Tracy Lawrence, Ty Herndon, and Andy Griggs, just to name a few. You can find Johnny at daredevilproduction.com. That is production, singular, no S, and there is no S because there is no other Johnny D.
Oh boy, the feathers are flying in the hen house in the music industry today, aren't they?
Oh, they are. There's some stuff going around, and thankfully we're gonna talk to one of the guy that's one of the instigator, one of the feather rufflers.
Yeah, one of the agent
today.
Yeah.
Yes, you say the fancy word, I'll be like feather ruffler.
Yeah. There you go, Anthony Smith.
Anthony Smith, he posted this thing on Facebook that I saw, and a bunch of people were sending it to me about songwriters reclaiming their worth and standing up and going, "No feather," like Gandalf.
Yeah,
stop here.
That's
so,
right.
Anyway, it was great, and thankfully I'm blessed to know Anthony a little bit, so I was able to reach out to him and go, why don't you bring that kind of heat to the show? And so that is what we do today.
That's right. I can't wait to get into that interview. It's really good, man. Before we do that, let's take care of a little business first.
Yes.
Make sure you join the C.L.I.M.B community on Facebook. Just search for the C.L.I.M.B community. And it asks to be let in, but we let everybody in as long as you don't look suspect, like you're trying to sell us something. Man, that's where you're going to find peers, your peer group, everybody there loving on you, supporting you, and you're going to be loving on them and supporting them, which is the best way to make friends, by the way. Love them first. But come on in. We want to hear about your new gigs. We want to hear about your new songs, your new music that you released. We want to hear about your wins, and we celebrate those wins on the show every week. What do we got this week, Brent, for Wednesday wins?
That's right. So every Wednesday we post the New Heights, is where we encourage you to share your wins with us so we can celebrate with you and we know where the party is. So more wins than we have time to share because, good problems around here in the Climb community like that. Too much winning. But here's a couple of them. Climber Brian Mullen says, releasing my new song, She Left Me With the Whiskey, May 24th. So, it's like coming up soon. Got a co-write that looks like it might go to country radio and possibly the Music Road charts this year. And I may be playing bass in a metal band soon. So there's Brian covering all the bases.
Dang.
No pun somewhat intended. So awesome for that, Brian.
Nice.
Yes, let's see. Tracy Richardson, who I saw at Tin Pan, says, still buzzing from the week of Tin Pan, wrote some killer songs, had a meeting at BMI, saw and heard incredible rounds, and celebrated my NSAI lyric contest win. Trophy! Also got invited to play at the book launch for the event for Bill O'Hanlon, Nancy DeCant, and Leslie Bowe, and Tom Douglas played my keyboard. What?
Yes, I saw that. I saw her there.
That is great. Nice. So congratulations, Tracy. And for you and Brian, keep on climbing.
There you go. I love it. I love it. So, hey, guys, make sure that you sign up for that. Make sure you follow the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and tell a friend about it. Really, that's what it's all about. It's like we're striking a note somewhere. We're resonating somehow. Help us resonate with more people. So,
That's right.
this is
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
All right.
Here comes Anthony Smith.
It's nice in Nashville, I bet.
It's nice.
Even when the weather's bad.
Although we're getting that's coming through, but we're not gonna get. It doesn't look like we're gonna get it as bad.
Yeah, but you'll get rain. The rain will leave, and I'll still have Missouri.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know what the temperature is, but I think it's probably about 70 right now.
Nice. What is it here? It's 55 here. It was warmer before, but I just, I got drenched running in the house to take a bathroom break and change shirts. So I'm like right by the house, but there's enough of a turn it'll get you. So
There you go.
man, thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
So it's funny when you posted the Facebook post. Of course, I ran across it because I follow you on socials and stuff, and of course, then I had people sending it to me and all kinds of stuff. It was raising all kind of ruckus, and I thought this is a conversation worth having. Now it looks like you took it down.
I just took it down
like, I don't see it.
temporarily. I did take it down because there was I started getting a couple comments from probably I'm assuming they were young artists that was bitching about it, and so I took it down and let things cool off, but I'm going to definitely put it back up,
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, because I definitely want to talk about it. So
Sure.
I just don't have it to reference now because I didn't print it off back then. I thought I'll just go over there and where to go.
Well,
But we'll, I know enough of the stuff about it to get the conversation going. And it's one definitely worth having for songwriters because, for obvious reasons. So I'm excited to talk about it. I think it's going to be catnip to our community because, our community is a lot of songwriters, indie artists, industry people. Like we send it out to a bunch of industry people as well. And just try to cut as wide of a swath as we can with our listenership. So I think it's worth chatting about. So
absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more layers to this that everybody, including you, Anthony, need to hear that it's gonna fill your heart. It's gonna make your heart happy, I think.
that's good.
I was actually just talking about this with the other Anthony Smith in my office yesterday, not specifically about your post, but it's a little tangential, but it's not. It's kind of the same. The conversation came around the same way to an amalgamation of what you're talked about in your post. Okay, so yeah, I think let's get into it.
Do you one of you have a copy of that?
No, unfortunately I don't. I had the link.
Can probably, if you want me to pause, I can probably turn it on in like 2 seconds.
Wait, I might have it because hold on. Bear with me.
Yeah, the link won't work because I had the link, but I think
Well,
I wasn't gonna just read it. I was rather you just give us your take.
Yeah, I think that's a better thing
because that's better than me reading your words. I'd rather just unfold in the conversation, and then we can just pull it apart and stuff. So
yeah, let's do that. Let's just start it out with why don't you introduce him, Brent?
Yep.
And then let's just ask him what he posted, and have him just give him the conch and let him explain what he said and where he came from, and then we're going to come in with all kinds of agreement and support.
yeah.
All right, brother.
No, don't pay me. By the way, Anthony, I'll just tell you, I would say you've either ruined or actually no, redeemed and up leveled just the name Anthony, because of your record. I got another buddy named Anthony, and every time I say his name, I think in my head, I think Anthony. What is impossible to do? I probably told you that before, but every time I hear that word, that I'm just like Anthony. So anyway, every dang time. If that tells you anything about how much I've listened to that record.
Oh God.
Love it. All right.
That's awesome.
All right, we'll do the intro here. We're already rolling, so we'll cut all this stuff out, but I'll do the intro
Okay.
and then we'll just launch into it.
Yeah.
All right. Today's guest is a singer, songwriter, and record producer. As a Nashville recording artist, his debut album, If That Ain't Country, on Mercury Records Nashville, produced 3 top 40 singles on the Billboard Hot Country Singles and Tracks chart. As a songwriter, he's had over 250 songs recorded, including Run and Cowboys Like Us by George Strait,
Dang.
I'm Trying and Chrome by Trace Adkins, Didn't I? And What Do You Think About That by Montgomery Gentry, What Brothers Do by Confederate Railroad, My Worst Fear for Rascal Flatts, Christofferson for Tim McGraw, Chasing Down a Good Time by Randy Houser, and many, many more. Anthony Smith, welcome to The Climb.
Welcome.
Hi there. Hey, thank you for having me.
I'll add
Heck
one
yeah.
more slash onto that list of accomplishments. He is also, at this moment, the agent provocateur.
He is. And a two-timer climber. We're starting to come back around,
right.
which is fun. Anthony
you go.
also, if y'all want, because you won't get enough of this. So when you want more Anthony Smith, it's a song title challenge 135. Somebody threw the title Pointless Score at us, Pointless Score. And we, I don't know, I don't remember what we did. It's been a minute, but if
Oh,
y'all
I
want to hear it.
remember that. I
Yes.
remember.
So STC 135, y'all can reference that for some more. But man, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And you know what? I'm going to say this just to set the tone on this interview right off the bat. Brent and I were talking about this before you hopped on, Anthony. You're a trailblazer. You're a pirate. I love that about you. You know, from Chrome, right, which we talked about, the song that nobody was ever going to cut, that totally, went this different way that kind of really took the whole country genre with it in a lot of ways, right? I think that's fair to say. And here you are again, and I think, are you a pirate or are you a visionary? That's kind of where what we're gonna discuss. So, because what you said stirred, man, it got the hens in the hen house all worked up, didn't it? And
Yeah, I'll set this up a bit too, because I follow Anthony on social media, and this Facebook post showed up in my feed, I'm sure because it was already getting a lot of reaction. And so the algorithm graced me with its presence. And I was like, oh, what is this? And so reading it down, and then it's provocative and I love it. And then I had people sending it to me and posting it in some of my groups and that kind of stuff. So it's making the rounds. And so I thought it'd be a great conversation to have here on the show, so we could dive into it and you can just kind of flesh out what your thoughts on it are. But they haven't probably read it yet. So can you tell us what's up, what's on your mind, and all the glass houses you're throwing rocks in?
The state of the music industry right now, and a lot of people don't know this. The vast majority of people don't know this, but over 80% of the professional staff writers in Nashville are gone. The last 15 years, they're not here. They just couldn't make a living, so they had to go because for a few reasons. The record sales are pretty much non-existent. Everything's a download, and from downloads, songwriters don't get any money virtually. I mean, it's pennies on the dollar, if that, and so it puts you in a really bad spot because you have people who've come here who sold everything they had to get here. They live out of their car just hoping to be a recording artist or a songwriter, and make a living as a career. And, and so they've risked everything. And what's the reward? Well, I mean, even in the best case scenario, it's like equivalent to getting the NBA draft, or the NFL. It's the equivalent of being able to get yourself a publishing deal. And then you have to go through that same odds again to get a cut. Then you got to hopefully go through those odds again and hopefully get a single. And if it's a hit, that's the home run. And then it's all worth it. Even when you have a number one, that may be your last one. You know, you may never have another, and you're not going to be able to make, live forever on that.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the risk taken by songwriters is probably as steep as any industry I can imagine. So the amount of people who call themselves songwriters in the world, that the percentage who can make a living is such a small fraction. It's almost mind-boggling. And so, with that said, the industry, and this is the part that unfortunately, and it should be a discussion that shouldn't get you canceled. It shouldn't get you blackballed or anything like that. It should be something that people who love songwriters in this industry embrace and say, we got to figure out a way to make this right. And the industry has changed to such an extent that now you pretty much have to write with the artist to get a recording.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is that means you're giving half of the song away, regardless if the artist can write or not. You may go in there, write every word, you may do the melody, but that artist is going to walk out of there with half of that song.
Yeah.
And that is a tragedy beyond tragedy to me, because songwriters, for one thing, are making more, or not songwriters, excuse me, recording artists are making more money now on tour than they've ever made in history by a long shot. There are several in country music $1 million a night, not counting merch, $1 million a night artists. Some are more than that. But if you want to get a Jason Aldean or someone like that, who I love, it's going to cost you a minimum of $1 million for one night. So for a songwriter, being the low man on the totem pole, supporting the entire industry on their back. If you want to take 1 second and or maybe 30 seconds, let me explain a good way to give you some perspective. Like if you close your eyes and imagine yourself at a concert, imagine yourself standing behind this $1 million sound console run by an engineer who makes his living doing that, and then next to it's another console, but it's a lighting console that's $1 million, and it's got 2 or 3, 4, 5, $10 million worth of lights and lasers that he operates there, makes his living. Then you just follow it, you just go up to the stage. When you go up to the stage, you see all these microphones and amplifiers, stacks of amps, bass guitars, drums, risers, all of these things. Then you make your way backstage, and you see these guys pushing these road cases and all of that, just like a den of bees, a hive, and then you make your way out to the bus, and you see this fleet of buses and tractor trailers and all these drivers and roadies. And then you get on the bus and you go all the way to Nashville. Along the way, you're listening to music. You get there, you come to Music Row, you see record label, publisher, video place, recording studio, all of that. You see all of those things and all of these jobs out there that are running these labels, driving these buses, running the sound, the recording artist himself. And you go to church the next day and you just reach behind the pew and you pull out a hymnal. You pull that out and you're looking at it and you're singing along with the choir. And then you go to that evening, you go to a Sunday matinee and watch a movie. And you're just listening to the soundtrack of the movie. Everything I just mentioned to you and every job associated with it would not exist without a songwriter. The songwriter made every single job associated with that, and every visual you've seen from the engineers running the sound and the lights and the stage and the risers and the guitars and the artists themselves wouldn't exist. And so the fact that we have supplied, made a living for people, an opportunity to make a living from our brains, from our ideas, our creations. And I don't want that to sound very arrogant or anything, but it's just a way to put things in perspective, is that it starts with the song.
Yeah.
And so there's the fact that I think that there are people in the higher ends of the industry trying to do away with the songwriter. Ultimately, they don't want to pay us anything. And so That's the thought really that got the entire thing started, along with the fact that, well, if you guys want to say something, go ahead. I just kind of got on a roll there,
No, but
but
I think you've set up the
I think it's
support
great.
on what
Yeah.
you said. Now, like, talk about what you posted and what was so provocative,
right.
and then we'll get into it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how the post came about, besides what I just mentioned, was that, I was talking to several songwriters about this very subject. And, because I get hit up by new artists all the
Mhm.
time wanting, man, I need a hit song. Man, I need a hit song.
Mhm.
And they all have the same story. Basically, I'm going to go to radio, man. I believe I can have a hit. And I've got a team working with me. And you hear that a lot, and you want to help them. You want to
Yeah.
help. It's because you've been there. You know what it's like to struggle as a new person trying to get something going, and a great song is going to be one of the keys. And but in talking to so many songwriters and having done this myself, um, the one particular story I'd heard is uh, this guy who was writing for this artist, and the guy was just an artist that was just going from bar to bar to bar and little locations like that, and
Mhm.
taking his band, just like any artist that starts out,
Mhm.
and but he started getting these songs and recording these songs that this songwriter was writing, and before you know it, one of them went to number one in that region, that in that state,
Mhm.
and really boosted that guy's career. More people started coming out to hearing him, and then another number one, and then another number one, 5, 6 number ones into this song. This artist, by the end of that run, was making $10 million a year. He there wasn't
Mhm.
a venue in that state he could not fill, and that spread throughout the country. And he eventually came to Nashville, and the rest is history. He's an enormous artist. But the point of that is that he goes, because of these songs, he goes from making virtually nothing, 100,
Mhm.
$200 a night, to making millions of dollars a year because of those songs.
Mhm.
What did that songwriter benefit from that? Nothing. I think $1,500 a song if it goes to number one in that state.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it's mind-boggling. And one would think that, hey, man, I've become a very wealthy person now. I'm touring. Everybody knows who I am. I'm a celebrity. You would think that person would stop and pull out a checkbook and
Mhm.
write $1 million or whatever, $100,000, and send it to that songwriter and say, thank you. I would not be here right now if it hadn't been for your songs.
Mhm.
But for some reason, it doesn't seem to cross their mind.
Yeah.
And that really bothers me. Okay, so when I
Yeah.
talk to a songwriter now, when I talk to a young songwriter now who wants one of my songs to further their career, now there's a price tag attached to that.
Mhm.
And because I have nothing to gain by giving them a song, no matter what, even if it gets 10 million views on YouTube, I make nothing, but their
Yeah.
career launches. So
Mhm.
that, in a nutshell, that's where I come
Mhm.
from on that.
Yeah. So I completely agree with you on this, but from a from a different horse. From a different perspective. Like, to
Same posse,
me,
different horse. Yeah.
yeah. For me, the sentiment of what you're saying is, I agree with it. And I want you to know, like, at the end of this podcast, like, I hope that what I have to share with you, and my perspective on this, will actually make you feel better about this and see the light at the end of the tunnel, because it's a crappy tunnel right now that
Mhm.
you're, this
Mhm.
is factually accurate, everything you're saying, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Without a doubt. And it starts with the song, and these artists are being supported with the songs. And what has happened is that the monetization mechanisms for those songs that benefited the songwriters are
Mhm.
pretty much gone,
Mhm.
right? And we're in the middle of a paradigm shift in the music industry. And the ones that are feeling it the most are the ones with the most to lose, right? That all of a sudden now, um, the the people who have made a living doing this, a good living doing this, are having a hard time. To your point, Anthony, 80% of them have left Music Row because you said within the last 15 years. Well, that's 2009. Guess what? Spotify started in 2008, and
Yeah.
it's been proliferating that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, like where I come from, like the solution is never going to come from somebody doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. You're never going to get enough people to do that. Maybe you get one or two, but
Right.
so it's kind of like the argument of you should stop going to Walmart and support local mom and pop mainstream shops in your town. Well,
Right.
for me, it's like if mom and pop mainstream shops in town are trying to compete with Walmart price wise, they're never going to win, right? That's the wrong way to compete. The game has to change. So what can they do, right? And you see something like you see big versions of this. What is the difference between a 50-cent cup of coffee and a $5 cup of coffee at Starbucks? It's the story, man. You know what I mean? And it's a different way to market it. And so I, first of all, want to praise you because what you're doing here by shaking the cage is, I believe, makes you a visionary and is predicting the future in a very real way. It's kind of already happening. All right. So I was having this conversation yesterday in my office. I told you, like with the other Anthony Smith. So this is like an Anthony Smith centric freaking conversation. But
Yeah.
You have an industry what I want you to do is see the big picture. And if you see the big picture and you see why things are happening, then I think you'll see how, number one, how right you are. And number two, how maybe it's not going to be a price tag that comes in with it, but the songwriters across the board with label artists and with indie artists are going to be better compensated for it, okay? Because money talks and bullshit walks, all right? I'm just going to say that. Like that's all there is to it. It's economics. It's the free market. And because of what you said, like it's starts with the song. You can't fake it, right? You can't pretend like you don't need the songwriter. So the artists who don't want to play ball the new way, which I'm about to, given like one sort of pathway to, right? Maybe it's not going to be the exact pathway, but those artists that don't want to play that game aren't going to get those songs that they need, right? And they're going to see a lot of problems with that. I mean, if Jason Aldean, and he's done nothing wrong here, so I'm just using his name because you brought it up, right? But like if an artist of the size, let's say, of a Jason Aldean or a Luke Bryan says, you know what, I'm gonna trim some fat here, I'm gonna make some more money, and so I am not gonna play this game with the songwriters. They're gonna be putting out subpar products, and it won't sell. And they may be able to tour forever on the songs they already have as hits, but they're not going to be able to stay relevant, right? And it's going to end quicker. So here's the thing. Spotify, I think we're going to look back on Spotify 20 years from now and realize that it was a necessary evil, okay? It was necessary because it took that company to do the unimaginable, which is to change the behavior, to create a behavior modification of almost an entire planet. Okay? It's not a trend. So if you think, let's just talk about like the really big picture, and then I'll chunk down a little bit. If you think about a big record in the United States, specifically 330 million people, if you go platinum on a record deal back in the day, on a record, that's a good thing, right? That's gonna keep your record deal. You're growing. You're gonna continue to make a living, right?
Right.
If you go diamond, right, 10 million records, I mean, a platinum record, 1 million, it's like 0.3% of the population bought that record, right? 1 million out of 330 million people loved it so much they paid for the music in the United States. So we're just going to use the United States as an example. And if it goes diamond, like how many diamond records are there like in a decade? You can count them probably on one hand in a genre, in a specific genre. Would you say that's fair? You know? And so in 10 years, you might have 5 records that sell 10 million or more in the United States. 10 million. So 33 million people is 10% of the population. You're talking about like 3% of the population love this record, and that becomes a superstar record, right? Like like super, super, super high. Now, what Spotify did was because by the way, everybody there, there's a very small group of people who are actively spending money on the products that we create in the music industry prior to Spotify. Okay. And now what Spotify did, which was fascinating. Okay. And I'm not saying Spotify's doing anything right in terms of paying writers. I'm going to talk about their fate in a second too. Okay. But man, now we have hundreds of millions of people where they find, even though they can listen to it for free. So before Spotify, the people that didn't spend money on records, that weren't just like us, who were obsessed with music and records and CDs and buying everything. They're just like casual listeners of music are just going to listen to the radio because it's free. And God bless you, Anthony and Brent, y'all were getting paid on that, Now, if you're the biggest Bob Dylan fan on the planet, okay, and you've got every CD, every 8-track, every cassette, every SACD, every box set, every freaking product Bob Dylan ever put out, you own. How do you listen to Bob Dylan?
Streaming.
You stream it because it's easier, right? So a couple things have happened here. Bigger money is now involved because you have more people that, even if I can get it for free on the radio, which still exists, I'm still willing to spend $10 or $12 to get the historical access to all the recorded music in history per month. That's worth it to me. So now all of a sudden everybody, even people who would never buy a record or a bunch of records are buying $140 a year worth of records times hundreds of millions of people. So the pie grows, right? And I predicted this on the podcast in 2017 when the record industry was on its knees with a $15 billion a year gross for the industry, coming down 80% from our big max of like 75 billion a year. That same year in 2017, online gaming hit 150 billion. I said, when the record labels pull their heads out of their asses and start, working streaming instead of fighting against it, they're going to shoot way beyond 75 billion. And that's exactly what's happened. All right. And now we have the huge catalogs that have become, for the first time ever, investing in music prior to Spotify was an angel investor. It was somebody who just loved this artist so much that they're going to give this money, but you didn't have institutionalized investing in music because it was too risky and too small of a business. But now you have big, huge catalogs that are being sold like asset class hedge fund assets on Wall Street. Why? Because, to my point about Bob Dylan, they create regular, consistent revenue, which means that the financiers can come in and bet on that and say, hey, we know that this revenue is going to be the same a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It may go up a little bit, it may go down a little bit, but it's going to be consistent. We can borrow against that money, invest in other stuff. The same way they believe in Apple or General Electric or one of these other huge company stocks. That never existed before because it wasn't available in the way it was. Now, having said that, This is what blew the other Anthony Smith's mind last night, man. Spotify's role in the music industry, the way that we know it now, the way it exists now, is ultimately doomed because of economics. It ain't gonna last long because they don't own the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
They do not own the traffic. Nobody goes to Spotify for Spotify. They go to Spotify for Taylor Swift. They go to Spotify for Kenny Chesney. They go to Spotify for Van Halen. And they also, guess what? Don't go to Spotify for Universal or for Warner or for Sony. That's an effing problem, okay? That is a problem for the streaming service and a problem for the record labels. But the power now is in the artists. I'll prove my point. It has been unheard of prior to the last 3 or 4 years where any artist whatsoever is going to have a relationship with a major label and also own their masters.
Mm-hmm.
And now we see Taylor Swift, Drake, these bigger artists, the Weeknd, man, their deals are, I own the masters, okay? And they get to do with them what they want. Now, just recently in the last 2 weeks, we saw the whole kerfuffle with TikTok and Universal Music Group. Universal pulls everything from TikTok, and Taylor says, I'm going to make a deal with TikTok and put my stuff back on there. Why?
Yeah.
Because I can. I own the masters. And Universal's like, please, the record label's like, please don't do this. She's like, no, I got a record coming out in a week. I'm not going to ruin the launch of this record. It's going to cost me millions not to do this. No, I don't care. I'm going to do it this way. And so she does it, right? So you have artists now that don't have the traditional relationship where they're beholden to the record label. Universal Music Group to Taylor Swift is a marketing arm that can be replaced. So the artists, generally speaking, know where their bread is buttered, right? And the songwriters who understand what you understand, Anthony, that this whole thing doesn't work without me, okay? The game's going to change. I predict maybe it's not going to be $20,000 down. Maybe it would be for indie artists that aren't, that are still too early on. And why not? There's plenty of them with plenty of money that'll be willing to pay.
Right.
But, when the artist owns the masters, and now you don't have corporate getting in your way, you can go in and say, I want a piece of the master for the song, right? I'm going to want a percentage of the master. And that's already starting to happen in some circles. And that will continue to happen where songwriters will develop more of a JV partnership with an artist for that very reason, because there is plenty of money to go around. And let me tell you, if you look at, and here's proof to what I'm saying as well. Like, I always looked at Hollywood, Anthony, as I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a genius, okay? But I've always been able to very accurately predict the music industry in this paradigm shift that we're in by looking at Hollywood, because they're a little bit farther ahead on the transformational journey over to digital and understanding digital than the music industry is. And you want to talk about laggards, right? Like, the music industry, I think, might be the only industry on the planet Earth right now that still doesn't know who their customer is. And maybe that sounds like sort of vague, but think about everywhere that you spend money, man. You got Netflix, you've got subscriptions to Amazon, you've got maybe NBC or CBS. Like, it's all, everybody that you do business with knows who you are, has your credit card number, knows what you like and what you don't like, except for the music industry. And if you look at the big picture, if you look at Netflix, for all intents and purposes, used to be the Spotify of Hollywood, right? And when they first came out, 2007, when they were first streaming, okay, in 2007, we have to remember they sucked. Like there was nothing on there, right? It was all documentaries and C movies. Why was that? Here's why. Because they couldn't get any licenses. Why couldn't they get the licenses? Because nobody in Hollywood understood what streaming was. And they weren't going to mess with it. It was just like, now, beat it, kid. We're busy over here making real stuff here. Well, in 2 years' time, Netflix made enough money on those stupid documentaries in C-level movies, direct-to-DVD stuff. They came back to Hollywood and said, look at how much money we made on streaming on stuff you've never heard of. Now, imagine what we could do with Friends or with The Office or with Top Gun, right? So then all of a sudden that impressed Hollywood and they're like, okay, here's some licenses. All of a sudden the content gets better. And from 2009 to 2013, Netflix blows up into $1 billion business just the same way that Spotify is right now. But until 2013, they didn't own the traffic. So it was a business that was built on rented property because they proved that traffic digitally generates revenue, a lot of revenue. And that revenue, okay, is going to, it's traffic, the revenue's in the traffic, and the traffic isn't owned by Netflix. Nobody's going to Netflix for Netflix at that time. They were going to Netflix for Friends. They're going to Netflix for Top Gun, okay? And Netflix saw this and started to make big bets. The biggest one was the $100 million bet they made on 2 seasons of their first original piece of material, which was House of Cards. And that won 3 Emmys, right? Came out in 2013. 7 years later, Netflix nominated for 165 Emmys. The Emmy Awards, by the way, owned by the networks, who always pulled the levers in Hollywood, who own everything. They decide if you get an Emmy or not. The Emmys is their show, right? And all of a sudden, Netflix nominated for 165 Emmys, the nearest network, 31. They blew them away, and the tables have turned. Now, Netflix started making its own content because they understood that pretty soon the bloom was going to come off the rose. The novelty of this new cash register that's making all these millions of dollars for them on these network products, somebody's going to start scratching their head and saying, wait a second, whatever we're splitting with Netflix, like I can put this freaking Friends, I can put it on any server, and these people will go to that server because I have the traffic. I own the traffic. So whatever we're splitting with Netflix for what is essentially now a video player technology is too much. So what do you have? You have NBC, Disney, ABC. They all got their own streaming services. And 2 things happened there. Number one is, for the first time in the history of Hollywood, Hollywood and the music industry are very similar because they make artistic intellectual property, and they're geniuses at promoting that artistic intellectual property on broadcast platforms. They're about the same age-ish, about 120 years old. And Hollywood now splits everything up, and it's not commoditized, okay? So if you've got a 5-year-old daughter, I don't care what your politics are, you got a subscription to Disney. Because your 5-year-old daughter doesn't give a crap about how you feel about what Disney's doing, right? And so you're paying that money. So all of a sudden it adds more value to the products. If you like Friends, you're going to have a subscription to NBC. Now, if you look at the music industry currently, first of all, let me finish with Hollywood. So they own their own streaming services. The knee-jerk reaction was monetary. We should get 100%, rightly so, 100% of the revenue that the traffic from our intellectual property creates, right? Absolutely. Number 2, for the first time ever, Hollywood knows who the customer is, right? I know it's Anthony Smith. I got his credit card. I know he watches this kind of stuff. I know he's not interested in this kind of stuff. So they're not wasting your time or their money trying to push something in front of you that they know that you don't like. Right? Now, this is huge because when it comes to promotion and where your dollars are spent and efficiency in spending dollars, this matters. I haven't had a cable hookup for live television in my house for a decade. That's how long it's been since I've seen a tampon commercial. They know I'm not a buyer, right? They're not going to spend any money putting tampon ads in my Facebook feed or on commercials on the stuff I'm watching here on my TV subscriptions, because they know this guy doesn't buy tampons. He doesn't want to see that, you know? So that's what happened with Hollywood. That's what will happen with the music industry, because the difference, they're very similar industries, Hollywood and the music industry, but with very different products. It still costs millions of dollars to make a TV show or a movie. And there's 120,000 uploads a day on Spotify. Spotify cannot do what Netflix did. And they know it, which is why they spent $2.5 billion on podcasts in the last 4 years, okay? Because they see it coming. And the record labels eventually, right now, everything's commoditized. So I can get the same stuff musically on Amazon as I can get on Apple, as I can get on Spotify. And when you have a commoditized product like that, there's only one way to compete. How is that?
Price.
The only way I'm going to get new people to come to my new streaming platform is by making it cheaper and offering the same thing. But when the labels pull their licenses, which they will, and if you want Taylor Swift, you're going to have to subscribe to Universal. And if you want, if you want Van Halen, you're going to have to subscribe to Warner. And that's going to be the deal. And now everything's separate. It's not commoditized, and they can begin to ratchet up those prices. But here's the thing. The middleman will be gone, okay? So Spotify, I think, will look back in 20 years and realize that it was a necessary evil because it just switched everybody over to streaming. But there is a boatload of money to be made on streaming when you eliminate the middleman. And it's the only relationship that a middleman, AKA a distributor, has in any business. The only value that they bring to business with a distributor of a product or service, the only value they bring to the creator of that product or service is that they have a relationship with the end user that the creator either can have, which has been the case in the music industry for 120 years, or in this case now, doesn't have. So we see Taylor Swift leading the way on that, okay? And other artists are going to follow. Didn't Miranda just get a new record deal? I'll bet you a month's pay, she owns her frickin' masters now. Why wouldn't she, right? I want what Taylor has. I want to do it that way. So I think that it's going to fall into the hands of the artists. The artists like Drake, like The Weeknd, like Taylor Swift are becoming these huge self-contained businesses that are utilizing the infrastructure of the music business to promote their products, but they're not that. But the people who pull the levers are clearly gone, because Taylor couldn't do what she did with TikTok unless she was in complete control. So Taylor knows, and these artists know, like, where their bread is buttered, like whatever it is that creates their product that they're selling, they are not going to shun that. And some of them will be stupid and just try to do it, and they'll lose, So I think this is going to settle down really quickly, Anthony, and that I think the songwriters are the last to go up on the roller coaster, up to the top. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when that happens, it's going to change the game. So, like what you said, like, I want 20 grand for a song. If you're an indie artist, like, I get that. And let me share something else with you. Like, on Spotify, they put out a report in 2021, looking back on the year 2020, and they said that year, as crappily as Spotify pays, that they paid exactly 13,400 artists at least $50,000 in streaming money in 2020. So that's your indie artist all the way up to Elvis and the Beatles, okay? When we did the math and I backed everything out, this will surprise you, but the brand name artists over the last 60 years that still have that kind of traffic going to Spotify, I came in pretty comfortably around 8,400 indie artists out of that 13,400 that figured out a way, who would never get a record deal, who were never going to get on the radio, that figured out a way to make at least 50 grand on Spotify to generate the kind of traffic that's required to make 50 grand on Spotify. The next year, that same report came out, that number grew from 13,400 artists to 16,500. It grew by almost 20%. That's a massive amount of growth, which opens up the market for artists and for songwriters like you. I don't need anybody's permission now. And they're proving that they can market themselves and they're learning how to do it. So, and Anthony Smith can come in and say, well, hey man, let me look at your numbers, let me see, and I'm gonna decide if you're gonna pay me a flat rate for the song or if I'm gonna take a piece of the masters. But if you want my architecture, my blueprint, which is what this is, right? And you're gonna take my blueprint, you're gonna put your own slicks on it, you're gonna put your own carburetor in it, you're gonna paint it the way you want, you're gonna make the interior look, but that car don't run without my blueprint, you know? Then maybe you take a piece of the masters. And there is a boatload of money in owning the masters. I mean, $3,200 per million streams. So for the bigger artists, it has the ability to keep on paying, right? Because again, back to the Bob Dylan example, it's hard. It's a lot of information, man. It's hard to get your head around, but you're headed there, Anthony, and you're maybe the first one that came out and said it out loud. God bless you. And you're absolutely right. But that's what's going on, in my opinion. Now, chew on that and tell me what you think. Like,
well, great to have you on today, Anthony. Well, we'll see you next. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, but you know, so just a couple days ago, Digital Music News came out with an article on a new piece of legislature that's being proposed in Congress that will force automakers to continue putting AM and FM radio in their new cars. And the reason for this legislature is, of course, we have to find a marginalized group or something, okay? And they're like, basically, communities still, and especially rural communities, so there's your marginalized group, the poor rural communities, need to have radio in their car. So if the power and the cell service goes out, they need to be able to get news, traffic, and weather, right? If we don't do that, these people are somehow going to die because they don't have the information on these things. Well, let's just, first of all, if you know people, and Anthony, I know you know a lot of people deep in the radio business, right, that own several radio stations, they're little empires. That's the lie that these people keep telling themselves, okay? Because they have to, because it's where their heart, their soul, their legacy is, and it's hard for them to look down the barrel of being Y2K'd. So now I'm going to say it and shake the tree, right? But here's the deal. 120 years, radio hadn't had to have any help from Congress to compete in the marketplace. And now, all of a sudden, they do, right? And you have states like California who are being very proactive on mandates for electric vehicles. And you've got our current administration doing the same thing. If these bills pass, the next 7 to 10 years, we're all going to be forced to buy an electric vehicle. And guess what? Those electric vehicles, the AM radio in those cars aren't going to be worth a crap. If the power goes out and the cell service goes out, they're not going to be worth anything either. So it's not about getting the message to poor people in the rural areas. It's a radio lobbyist group that's putting this bill together saying, you need to do this. Why? Because the automakers are seriously considering not putting AM radio in the cars. Automakers do not work for the government. It's an open, free market. Why on earth would they think about not putting AM and FM radio in a vehicle?
Because nobody's listening to
Because
radio.
nobody's freaking listening to radio.
Yeah.
And where is most radio consumed?
In the car.
In the car. So dig this, man. Dig it, right? All the major, in country radio specifically, all the big advertisers, the Coca-Colas, right? They've all left terrestrial radio advertising with the exception of two, trucks and beer. Because they understand that it's way down, but it's not, it's still worth it for them, right? So how's radio being supported through advertising? It's by the mid-level and the small companies that still believe radio works. But when GM comes out and says, we're not putting radio in cars anymore, that's it. The bottom's going to fall out.
Yeah, I think that helps some on the long tail. But Anthony, we just drank from the fire hydrant for a little while here. But have your thoughts on some of that as far as, I'm totally in agreement with you on songwriters reclaiming some of their power and their worth. There's a balance there, because I'm sure you feel it too, of I'm at a time going, gosh, please somebody record my song.
Yeah.
And you're so desperate.
Well, I don't see anything, an uptick in anything happening in the short term for songwriters. And because they don't really, first of all, even if you have the masters, that's no money. Because you're not going to get the master on the whole record. You're only going to get a very small piece. If it's 10 songs on the record, you're going to get 1/10 of the master. And that would only be, imagine your song may not even be the most downloaded or most streamed. So even if your song had 1 million, you're getting 1/10 of that $3,500. And so there's no money even in owning the masters unless you are the artist yourself. You write your own song, you own the master, you own your publishing, then you can make some money. So that's $50,000 that somebody might make. The songwriter is going to see a few hundred, if that.
You're right. Let's take your example. 1/10 is $320. But that's also, here's the thing. That's the label's getting a cut, and so is Spotify. So there's way more money being made on the streams. It's just nobody's seeing it because it's not going to the artists.
Yeah, but I will say this: that may be something down the road, and I wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think you're really smart in how that you're putting that together. I think that's a long haul to get there from here, because it could happen a lot quicker. Things sometimes just fall apart with industries, and everything. I think, but the thing of it is, the record labels and Spotify will go down kicking and screaming, no question about it. And the first place that they're going to take, if first person's going to get a cut, will be the songwriter every single time. And so we can't go back to the way that it was. We all agree on that.
That's right.
And and I think that maybe there's some kind of hybrid of all this, because ultimately the songwriter has all the power. Songwriters combined have all the power. We can control, we can own everything. The problem with that is that it's too competitive. Right. There's nobody that sold everything they had to get to Nashville and is starving, eating ramen noodles every day. Who was lucky enough to get a Luke Bryant hold, is going to say, okay, I'm going to pull that out of principle with the rest of the guys and just hold out. There's nobody going to do that. And you can't blame them. I get it. I totally get it. This is your chance. You may never get it again. So it makes it really rough. I had a conversation with somebody in the NSAI, and which is, has been, for people who don't know out there, they work for the songwriter to hopefully make their royalties higher and things of that nature.
Yeah. Love it.
And they go and they lobby, in Washington. And I think maybe I'm a little more, not as being diplomatic as some people. Um, and I think that there's a time for that, and there's also a time that something just needs to be said. You can't stop. You got to stop tiptoeing around it, and you
Yeah.
have to know your self-worth. And
Mhm.
songwriters, for whatever reason, they want to take the small piece of the pie. And another thing that we also have to keep in mind is that, we're talking about this thing fixing to go out. Radio's fixing to go out. Well, songwriters are fixing to go out if we don't do something, because
Yeah.
AI will replace us. No question about it. It
Mhm.
will replace us. And unless we get a foothold to where we can even control that content, or at least have ownership in that.
Mhm.
What does that mean for the following generation of songwriters? I don't know at this point. But the thing of it is that the NSI guy, a guy I was talking to, I said, I know this is going to come across really hardcore. I know this is going to be like, oh
I
my
love
God.
it. Bring
I'm
it.
here for it. Yeah.
So I was telling him, he was telling me how, you got to you got to play the game, politics. It's
Mhm.
because these politicians don't know the music business. They don't know how royalties work, and they've got other fish to fry, which is more important to them than some songwriter, artsy fartsy guy,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
girl.
Most artists don't know how the music industry works. Let's be honest.
It's
Yeah.
true. And so, and I told
I
him, I
mean, come
said,
on.
the American public or the world don't know that we do not have any kind of bargaining power,
Mhm.
which is why I kind of come up with that number, which was, what's that number come from? This is out of nowhere, but 20,000. But the point of it is that, you know, that putting a number on it was because we haven't had a raise in our royalty rate. And how long did we go? We went 75 years or something like that, 80
Long
years,
time.
whatever
Yeah.
it was. And yeah, can you still see me?
Uh-huh.
Can you
Yeah.
still
Your
see
video
me?
froze up
Okay,
for a
okay.
second, but we can still hear you.
Okay, somebody's calling me, and I can't. Anyway, so I can't see you guys. But anyway, so uh, I was talking to the NSA guy, and I was telling him, I said, I said that I know that the politicians don't get it, but we own our songs. We should have a say. We should have some bargaining power. We should
Mhm.
be able to tell this artist that, yeah, this is how much it costs. You
Yeah.
want, I got a track record. You got a track record. If it here's, and the artist can negotiate too, because
Mhm.
it may be Jason Aldean. Jason May Aldean, yeah, but you know what? If I record it, it's going to make this much money.
Yeah.
So there has to be a bargaining tool in a country that is, uh, free trade. How come the songwriter is the only person who can't name his salary? He's the
Right.
only person.
That's
We're
right.
the only people who are dictated to by the government, our royalty rate. That's
Mhm.
wrong. So I'm telling this NSA guy, I'm like, man, I said, you need to forget the diplomacy. I said, you've been doing that for 80 years. Where does that
Yeah.
got you? Nowhere. Zero raise. What you need to do is you need
You
to
got nothing to lose.
jump
Yeah.
up on you need to jump up on that desk right there in front of that entire panel of politicians and start pointing your finger. Say, I want to know who's getting money from Google. I want to know
Mhm.
who's getting money from Apple. Who's getting the kickback that's keeping us? Who you guys are saying that free downloads? Who's supporting that here?
Yeah.
Because I want to get to the bottom of that, because that means you're taking from the songwriter. That means you're siding with the big corporation who has no cerebral investment in this whole thing. It's all the songwriter, 100%. That's
Mhm.
taking the risk on everything. So I mean, I think you have to get in their face and say, look, I'm going to bring attention to this. This is not going to be these little yearly meetings that NSA has with you politicians who just on a whim do what you want to do, and I don't know who's
Mhm.
in your ear. We need to say, look, I'm going to bring attention to this. If I got to go to the media, it's going to be David versus Goliath, and guess what? You're Goliath, and people are going to side with us. And
Yeah.
but you have to get an organization of songwriters who are influential songwriters
Hmm.
who will say, you know what, this is it. This is the plight of the songwriter changes today, and
Yeah.
it's got we have to. And the only way to do that is to be confident and understand that we are the motor that keeps this whole train running.
Hmm.
And until we understand that, we're just going to take the crumbs and off of everybody else's business model and follow that, eating those crumbs of their business model instead of creating our own.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the one place where the government doesn't really interfere and set the prices and everything and allows us to compete and negotiate is in sync, is in
Yeah.
like film TV, because they will call you and say, we want to use this song for this Ford truck commercial. And you're like, great, I'm Bob Seger, I want $1 million. If you
Yeah.
want to use Like a Rock, $1 million. Or, I used to work at Blue Water Music in the admin department, and stuff came in, wanting to use one of the songs. And as a publisher, we could be like, okay, well, this is how much we want. And we want most favored nations, meaning whatever you're paying the other publisher on this, we want to be paid at least as well as them, that sort of thing.
Right.
And you could negotiate. It happened quick. Sometimes stuff didn't work out. You'd say no. Other times you say yes, and it'd work out. But what that did was everybody ended up getting paid more. It's more of a lucrative business. And that's why a lot of writers are going over to streaming, going, I get paid better. It's still super competitive, but it's a growing market. More people need music for sync because there are more of those digital outlets. But wow, we can negotiate. Songwriters, publishers can say no, or they can say it's going to cost you this much. And I would love to see more of that brought into the more kind of mainline music industry.
Well, one of the things that he said that is, I mean, I think what he's talking about, we are going to eventually get there to that. I don't know if it's tomorrow. I don't know if it's, like he said, 20 years from now. But whenever that it is, that inevitably cutting out the middleman is going to be it's going to be necessary. And if, for example, and I know, golly, I'm going to make some people really ticked off at me now. But what is the role, truly, what is the role of a publisher? They don't even pitch anymore.
Yeah.
And I had a publisher.
That's crazy.
A publisher told me not long ago. He said that I asked him. We were just sitting around, and I was asking him. I said, "Sign any new songwriters that you're excited about?" And he says, "We don't even sign writers anymore."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What?" I thought he was joking. He goes, "No, we don't sign writers." He goes, "We sign track guys and artists. That's all we sign." He goes, "The songwriters will come to us to write with our artists, but we're guaranteed cuts if we sign artists and can get them a deal."
Yep.
So there's no risk for us, and the songwriter will just have to come to us. So right now, you got to think about it. And now, when you do sign a publishing deal, you give all your publishing to the publisher. You don't have these co-publishing deals unless that you. So not only are you giving half of away to the artist, not only are there no record sales, you are giving all of your publishing to the publisher, who doesn't pitch anything.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends that say, I'm a calendar jockey. Yeah. I set up rooms. I don't pitch that much. We still pitch, but really we know that the money is setting up the right room. So for me, the value of a publisher is, if you need a draw, they can help you not have so much of the day job in the short term, a little bit of a bank to help with demos and stuff. And then the other thing is the Rolodex. Like, how can you help me get in the right room so I end up pitching the song as I write it? But yeah, it's definitely different than it used to be.
Well, record labels don't take pitch meetings anymore. Very few. The only people who take pitch meetings are people from the artists, like the Jason Aldeans and Tim McGraw's and Luke Bryant's, who are older artists who don't write their own songs, who want the songwriter to keep their royalties.
Oh, the pitching's happening in the writing room with the artist. I see what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And so these songwriters, like the Blake Sheltons, they don't write. They want to enjoy their life and do their tours. They want to sit down when they are off the road. But what happens is, with these publishers are forcing you to write with these new artists, And even if that artist has no talent at all, and don't get me wrong, some of these artists are super talented writers. Some of them are just amazing. I love Hardy. I love several of them. I think are just great writers. But the point is that once that you sit down and you write an art with an artist, and that song that you write with them goes to #1, well, automatically, for whatever reason, they believe they're a hit songwriter. They really believe it just because their name is on it. It's just it's somehow it changes their philosophy of, oh my gosh, I just wrote a hit song. And they go get their awards for their triple plays and all these kind of deals. And check this out. I mean, people who are listening to this show, just let this settle into you. It's not been that long ago when the name of the songwriter was on the inside of the CD or the record or whatever that it was. If the video played on TV, it had the name of the songwriter on the bottom. Why would they take that off? It doesn't cost anything to put it on there. Yeah. They take it off because they don't want the public to know that somebody else was involved in creating this song. They want the spotlight to shine on the artist alone. So now you have these people who don't even know that there's such thing as a songwriter besides the artist. And these artists or these songwriters are having to go out and compensate their income by doing these shows. 20 years ago, there were 3, maybe 4 songwriter festivals in the entire country. That was it. You had your
Key West,
Florida, Durango, some other thing, and a few others. But now there are hundreds all over the country. And those only sprung up because songwriters weren't able to make a living. So they're going out to these things and making some money, not much, but some. And so I think that. And here's one other thing, I'll be quiet. In the 70s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s, the songwriter was exclusive. There was a mystique about a songwriter. It was, think of in terms of Andy Warhol. However, all the celebrities wanted to hang with Andy Warhol because it was a cool vibe about that, right? Well, songwriters used to have that same thing. Back before reality shows, there were variety shows. So you had Sun Cher, you had the Glenn Campbell show, you had Donnie Marie, Mac Davis, on down the line, literally about 75 to 100 different variety shows over a 5-6 year period through the decade of the 70s. And on every single one of those reality shows was a regular guest who was a songwriter. Christofferson, Carole King, Burt Bacharach, Paul Williams, on down the line. And when somebody got on Johnny Carson and just made a new record, they would be like, they wanted everybody to know, I just cut a Christofferson song. I just did a Carole King song. I'm so proud of it. And they wanted everybody to know because they had that Andy Warhol cool thing going on.
Yeah.
And so songwriters were celebrities.
Yeah, the Brill Building and all that, man. It was
the Brill Building. I've written in there myself.
Have you really?
That's awesome. Yes, yeah. Well, yeah.
Dude, you will be cool forever.
You know what? It was crazy. But no. So basically, taking that celebrity element out of the songwriter is what they've done, and I really want to help rebuild that because, all these creative things you're hearing on the radio and all of these inspiring songs throughout your lifetime came from a songwriter's soul. And if people need to know that. And but I agree with what he was saying though about the future of songwriting. I think there's a hybrid there somewhere.
Yeah, I think there is.
Check it out. I was just doing some numbers on the big picture, and across just Amazon, Apple, and Spotify, there's about 350 million subscribers, premium subscribers that are spending about $12 a month to access music. Y'all, that's $7 billion a month in revenue just from subscribing. Not talking about how many people are on those platforms for free that are getting ads, and
Ads,
that
yeah.
doesn't count the ad money, you know? So that's, times 12, right? That's $83,220,000,000 a year just in subscription money. And as we continue to, as the market continues to move to streaming, where are they moving from? Radio, right? And radio is not going to dwindle down to the last listeners. It's going to hit a point. It's right there now at rock bottom before it costs too much money to keep the lights on at the radio station with the FCC licenses and the rent and the electricity and right now at radio stations, you got a third of the staff working three times, doing 3 times the work for half the pay because they don't know where else to go. And they're going to stay there until the bottom falls out, but it's going to fall. And that's why that article about the autos hit me so hard, because you know what? If that bill doesn't pass, then they're going to stop putting AM and FM radios in the cars.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
This, whenever it comes to broadcast advertising, whenever it is, no matter what it is, if it's a billboard or a radio station or a TV show, they have demographics and a pitch. And they're like, well, here's how many people are listening to our stuff. And you got to believe them. There's no way for you to verify this like there is on digital. And so, the bigger advertisers are super savvy. The multi-billion-dollar advertisers are savvy. They know what's going on and they've left. The mid-level and small mom and pop companies still believe it because they got a relationship with the sales guy at their local radio station. And they believe that. But as soon as they read the headline that GM's not putting the radio in the cars anymore, they're going to be like, well, that's it. So they're going to pull all their money. That's going to be the trigger. And then it's over. And then it's over, right? It's going to happen like that freaking fast. One headline, and the radio stations will shut down. And then the people who were holding off purchasing a subscription to Spotify because they could still listen to the radio are now going to go and do it, right? So what are the numbers going to look like 5 years from now on streaming? How many subscribers, right?
Yeah, even bigger.
It's a lot. And it just, you follow the money. And that's the thing, like you just have to have, you're right, Anthony. I'm glad that you believe that. And you're right. The short term, maybe it's not going to be as fast as it needs to be for some people. But ultimately, when, everybody sees Taylor Swift as an anomaly, right? But I see her as like, well, she is an anomaly. But in the same way that Michael Jordan was the first frickin' basketball player to say, I'm not going to take an endorsement deal. I want 10% of the shoes.
Yeah.
And I mean, was it in like 2010 or something? Michael Jordan made $400 frickin' million from 10% of Air Jordans that were sold like 25 years after he retired. Why? Because he's like, they're selling because of me. And this is a songwriter, right? And that they own the traffic. It's like, you want to sell these shoes? I'm going to create the traffic. I own the traffic. You're going to get. Now, the thing was, he was the first one to get that. Now, every single basketball player with a shoe deal gets points on the sales. And there it is. I can show you a million other ways that manifests itself in other industries, but you are the genesis of the music industry as a songwriter. And that's it. And it's going to be the first person, Anthony, to use your words, who decides not to be a politician, that stands up and says, now I'm going to want some of the masters, By the way, it doesn't include the publishing money on those masters, right? And it doesn't include, when it shakes out, I don't know, maybe Spotify ends up being like Cox Cable or something, where they're like going to have all these different subscriptions
bundles
on there. It's a small platform, but Spotify's a bunch of tech guys. Here, think about this for a second. Bunch of tech guys said, we got this idea for streaming music. Who did they go to figure out how to pay licensing fees to get the music on their platform? Hey, how do we structure this? Who do they talk to? Freaking the PROs. right? Which is corrupt. It can't not be corrupt. It's human nature. All that money comes in there first, and they come up. I mean, it's like, you know, the sync kerfuffle at ASCAP, right? Where they're just like, oh, well, we got a new rule now because this is better for all songwriters, where we're not going to pay a first, whatever they call it, first voice fee for vocal bumpers on a TV show. And they took all this money and kept it because they could. Now that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So I think that the money's going to move faster. It already is. And there's going to be people that come out that are just like, you know what? It's all digital. If we're going to make $220 million a year on subscriptions, and we do this many streams every year, we're going to take 10% off the top or whatever, 15% off the top so we can run the business because we got to make a living too. And then whatever's left over, we divide that by the number of streams. That's how much a stream is worth. That's where it's going to head, because now if I'm going to get that traffic and I want to start a new streaming service, that's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to have to figure out a way to make that work. And because the traffic's there to be monetized, that's a lot of money, y'all. Every year, and it's growing. So I think the future looks good for you guys. It just sucks right now. It really does suck.
It does. But Anthony, I just want to thank you. There's an old saying that settlers get homes, pioneers get arrows, but settlers get homes. And
that's the truth, Anthony.
Yeah. And
God bless you for taking the arrows, man.
Yeah, for taking the slings and the arrows, and for standing up and lending your voice to it. Your voice has authority. I read off just some of your hits and cuts earlier. That gets people's attention, and it gives some cover to other people who are wanting to do that and believe they have more value and more worth. But now it kind of gives them some, like, well, Anthony Smith is doing it, and that sort of thing. And it's just super important, because I've had that conversation too with indie, about indie artists, like, oh, this guy's interested in hearing some of our songs. My co-writer going, okay, but we're going to need a part of the master or something, because that's just not worth it. Yeah. So it's an important conversation. I appreciate you for putting that out there.
Absolutely, man. Well, yeah, at least we got opening the dialogue, and I know that it's a scary proposition for a songwriter trying to get cuts out there, and it's scary for me too, because it's you rely on making money from your songs, but I felt like that it's got to be said, because if you open up that dialogue, even if people get upset at you, I mean, imagine someone who makes their living off of what you create being mad at you because their job is being eliminated.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. I believe, and that's what it is. Your job is disappearing, and they're mad at you because you are saying something about it.
Well,
right,
and
go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I thought you were done. Finish your thought.
Well, I pretty much am done. I just want to say that I think that we, the future, who knows? But somehow I'm hoping that songwriters can survive it, and I hope that AI, who's going to affect a lot of people's jobs, hope that AI can be,
That's a freaky thing, man, for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to think about that right now myself. Like, I don't have a thought on that. I just know it's a mess, and I know it's not right. Yeah,
I think we're actually having Bart Herberson from NSAI. We have him on the books to come in and talk about that specifically. So we're going to start diving into that more. And I'm just at the point, I'm like, ooh, that's spooky. Or I've heard some AI. It's not taking my job yet, but
it can't. It's like I've listened to a couple big tech podcasts too, like this, and we're so far off from actual, Skynet, right? Like, I mean, it's all of a sudden it looks a little more clear, like it could happen, but we're very, very far from that.
No, not. No, we're not. No, we are not far from a AI writing a song. I've heard people say that, but I'm telling you,
well, it's doing it. They're doing it now, but they suck.
No,
like it's not actually thinking. It's not actually conscious. Okay, and what I mean by Skynet is like it's conscious. It's
I'm telling you right now, before you know it. I know if you look at the long term of this,
Mhm.
there's no question songwriters that AI will be able to write a song probably within the next 2 years that I could A B the two songs, one written by human, one that's not of a specific genre, and
Mhm.
you won't be able to tell.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a website I ran across recently, and I was playing around with it with some guys in a co-write, and I was like, yeah, it's not. I put in a prompt for like a song I had just written earlier that week, and it's like, okay, here's write a country song about this, titled this. Here's a concept, and it kicked it out, like 3 versions in like a minute, which is
Yeah,
freaky, like full demo,
yeah.
vocal, all that.
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's not as good as what we wrote. It's
Right.
But the other person said, yeah, but this is the very worst it's ever going to be. It's only going to get better at
That's
this. I was
exactly
like,
right. Yeah,
yeah, it's a
and I
little
mean, you
spooky.
realize they're just data
Yeah,
mining our history of songs.
but so do I.
Yeah, well,
In a
yeah, I
way,
mean,
like,
we all do. But
yeah.
they're getting the technology is snowballing,
Mhm.
in itself. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I have no doubt 2, 3, 4 years tops they'll have AI because there's so much money to be made eliminating
Mhm.
songwriting.
Yeah.
You know, that's what they've been doing for the last 30 years, trying to get, you know, take a piece of what we do.
Well,
So
and the artist too with the what do you
that's
call
Mhm.
true.
that? The
Yeah.
uh, what is that? The hologram
Oh,
Yeah.
all that
stuff.
stuff.
There's
Yeah.
already tours that are happening with that. But there's still. I mean, what is it that freaks everybody out about Michael Jackson and Thriller or Guns N' Roses, right? It's not just the songs. It's like the sales, the way it's being sold, and
Mhm.
the authenticity of it. So I think I'm going to choose to believe this when it comes to that. Like it's going to get messy, but was it Abraham Lincoln that said you can fool all the people some of the time and some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. I
That's
think
it.
the more AI comes out, if the industry and the people who are pulling those levers really try to make that happen, then it just all of a sudden it makes it easier for a real writer and a real artist with something to say stick up their head above the din of it all. And the other thing I'll tell you is that we're also looking at this through the lens like let's say the worst thing happens and AI can write great songs and we can cop this voice and we can do all this stuff. All of that being successful and making a boatload of money depends on the promotion of it. And the lens that we're looking through is the lens that the music industry's always had, where, man, you're not an artist unless we give you the money to make the record because it's cost prohibitive to make a record. And you're not an artist unless we say it's okay for you to get on the radio because there's really only one way to promote and we can control everything. But now they can't. I mean, look at Dasha, right? 150 million streams. She uploaded that freaking record on DistroKid. 150 million streams. Why? Why did that? I don't know why. But people
Yeah.
freaking figured like they just connected with her. I don't think they can do that with AI. And if they do that with AI, it'll have to happen in an open market. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dasha didn't have $1 billion behind her that was in promotion. People just freaked out about that, and she got the deal afterwards. So
Yeah, but you know what? You wouldn't know if she had done an AI song or not.
Mhm.
That song could have been an AI song and you don't know it.
Yeah.
true, but again, my point is they can't keep you out, Anthony.
Mm.
Like I can keep you off the radio if all back in the day, right?
Right.
I can threaten your career. I'm a record label. I got 500 artists. You got one career. You're going to do what I want you to do, or I'm not going to let you on the radio. That's prime real estate. But now,
Right.
because of Dasha can do what she can do, or to your point, AI, they still let them compete in the open markets like let them. But they can't control the traffic to only go to AI. They can't. And, I think there might be like, hologram artists or something on tour. If that becomes a thing, still going to need songwriters, right? Like we need.
Well, they're going to choose which they make the most money off of.
Yeah.
If they make the most money off of AI, which as of right now, that's definitely, they would own everything.
Yeah.
Unless, like I said, they set up some kind of, thing where, because like I said, they all come from the human mind, even if it is AI ultimately. I don't know how that, I don't know the structure of how to just, put that money out there, because those songs that AI is mining from will be hit songs.
Yeah.
It won't be from record songs. It won't be from anything else. It'll be from the hit songs over the last 50, 100 years, or maybe further. I don't know, but because of that, how do you disperse that royalty?
Yeah.
Do you do?
Well, that's the legit argument that's going up with the
it might be
in Hollywood and stuff.
Yeah, it might be almost like, venues pay their ASCAP license, their BMI, their CSAC license in the U.S., and they don't, most of the time, they don't say what exactly got, played to pay out, but it goes into a fund that is not the general disbursement thing, which is an interesting concept for the AI stuff, because it's pulling from your songs, a lot more of your songs than my songs, but some of my songs too, and everybody else's, and Christofferson and Wiseman and all these guys. So it's like, well, you're pulling from it. That would be an interesting thing to see if there can be a pool fund to get dispersed there. But
well, if Ashley Gurley keeps going, none of us are going to have any royalties left. It's all going to be him.
Yeah,
it's going to be called the Gorley royalty.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I got my Gorleys in, my quarterly Gorleys.
I think when you see stuff, I just really think that when you see stuff like what Taylor Swift did, that could never be done 5 years ago. It would be unheard of to think of that, even, much less do it. And it's the record industry, the people that are pulling the levers on the record industry that have decided what we're going to hear and what we're not going to hear for so long, don't have that power anymore. That's.
Well, you remember when she pulled her catalog from iTunes?
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah, because of that whole kind of songwriter deal. And I was really gained a lot of respect for her. I mean, she's performed one of my songs one time, and that was around that same time. And I was the biggest Taylor Swift advocate in the world. She just sang my song on TV. She just, she stood up for the songwriter. I was like, proud moment, so I really respect that girl, like her or not, and most people obviously do. She has a backbone, and I think that something was built into her. I don't think it's simply because of her superstardom that gives her that power. It's her character anyway.
She still has to have a backbone. I'm stealing that that's the best way to describe Taylor Swift. Like it or not, love her or hate her, she has a backbone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And so do the other artists that have followed in her path, owning their masters and now making their own decisions. And it develops, man. And I think everything's going to be okay. I really think that you guys, the middleman will be gone soon. It's astonishing it's taken this long. To be honest, I mean, how long have we had streaming services in Hollywood where the NBC owns their own streaming and all that? Like, it's been a while.
Well, you got to realize there was a time when the only published way of making money from a song was two ways: the performance of it, which nobody paid a royalty on that, and the sheet music.
Yeah.
All there was sheet music. So the publisher only made money from sheet music. So when Edison came around and had these little canister recorders, all of the publishers were freaking out, thinking, "Oh my God, we're out of work now. We're out of work now." because it's going to be on a recording now, so nobody's going to need sheet music. Well, little did they realize that they was going to make more money than ever because they own the publishing, and when it's recorded, they own that too.
Yep.
So, or a piece of that, and so yeah, there's definitely a way to navigate this, and I think we'll just, long as we don't just settle for the crumbs, and we keep our, know our self-worth, we should be okay.
That's right. That's right. Yep. I think that's the best way to wrap it up, man. Anthony, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much
for writing that post. First of all, thanks for shaking up the hen house, man. Like, I'm all about that. Like, everybody's just dragging their feet on a lot of stuff in the music industry, and we need more guys like you. The world's a better place, Anthony, with you in it, and not just because of your songs.
Well, right back at you, pal. Right back at you guys. I appreciate you guys, and thanks for having me on. And
yeah, man,
we'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Let's make you a 3-timer. I love it, guys. Brings us to the end of another killer. Maybe this is one of the most poignant episodes we've ever had, I think. I really love this, and that's why we created the podcast. We want you to win. So keep on climbing.
And we'll